And one of the ways they do things to qualify unqualified people for these positions, like airline pilots, and I covered this when I covered the Endeavor crash a month ago, but I'll do it again here, is they change how they qualify people. Now, the most obvious way to qualify people for a job like airline pilot is to have some kind of objective testing. Let's pretend it's just a written exam. Obviously, there's more than that to being an airline pilot, but let's pretend it's a written exam for purposes of demonstration. So you can take a bunch of people took this test. Let's talk 100 people took the test to be a pilot. Let me make this bigger here. We're only going to look at the top 10 of those 100, but here are candidates 1 through 10, and then there'd be another 90 candidates we're not considering. And the top 10 have an average score of 83. But there's a range of scores here, right? All the way from what's the lowest one here? 75 up to 98. 98. So you could just rank those by score, highest to lowest, and then say there's 4 jobs available, 4 pilot job openings, and you take the top scoring 4. Easy enough. There you go. And they have an average score of 90. That's not bad. That's pretty good. That's A grade, maybe A minus. But it turns out there's a problem, because when you actually look at the racial demographics and gender of these top 4 candidates, a high percentage of the time, they're all white males. They're all white males. And it wasn't only white males applying. There was white females and black males. I mean, it was a mixed group. But the top 4 on objective scoring turn out to be white males. Well, we can't have that because we have to have social justice. So we need to take into consideration race and gender in assigning these jobs, these 4 pilot openings. So we add that as a criteria. Now we know for each of those top 10 candidates what their race is and what their gender is. Now we have the scores, the range of scores, 98 to 75, top to bottom. By the way, the lowest score is also a white male. He didn't get the job either. He's not getting the job just because he happens to be a white male. It was just the top scores. We rank by score. But now we have to change the score because we have to add some kind of scoring metric for gender and race. And we can do that by adding 1 point if you're female and 1 point if you're black. And if you happen to be both, you get 2 points. So now we have a different scoring metric. And what we say is all the people in the top 10 here, we're just going to say they're all qualified. The top percent of test takers just are blanket qualified. We're going to pretend that their test score doesn't matter anymore because they've been put in the qualified bucket. Now, within that qualified bucket, you choose based on race and gender, based on the race and gender points they have. And when
You're on the road to a good financial future. But what if you could do better? With Credit Karma, you can see.
Sort these. Now, within that qualified bucket, you choose based on race and gender, based on the race and gender points they have. And when you sort these by race and gender points, well, you get a very different ranking. Now, all of the top 4 people are female and 2 of them are black. And not one of the white males score in the top 4. So all the jobs go to women, half of whom are black and half of whom are white. And we say that, well, they're qualified. Everybody was equally qualified. They're all in the qualified bucket. The difference in the real world is that when you did it by objective score on the test, yeah, you ended up with white males having those 4 jobs, but they had an average score of 90. And when you do it your way, the DEI way, we end up with 4 pilots who have an average score of 79. And you may legitimately ask, well, does it really matter? Is a score of 79 that much worse than 90? Why can't we just deem them all qualified? And probably in most cases, it doesn't matter. I mean, for many jobs, safety isn't really an issue. So it doesn't matter from a safety perspective. You're not putting life in danger. You're just being grotesquely unfair to people because they were born a disfavored race and gender. But at least you're not risking life. And in many airline flights, everything is just fine. There's nothing dramatic going on. It's not that hard to land and take off an airplane if you're in the qualified bucket. But what about when things are not going fine? What about when weather conditions are poor, or some kind of malfunction occurs, or something else bad happens? Well, then the difference between that 79 and that 90 could be the difference between several hundred people dying in a fiery ball at the end of a runway.